You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma Podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatobi for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at citizensedmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. So yeah, go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedoghouseokc.com and follow them on Instagram at thedoghouseokc. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode down at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum today. Love coming in here. We're recording in the big room, the big, conference room? Not conference room. Ballroom. There we go. I knew it was a room somewhere. If you haven't been in here, please come down, because I'm just in awe looking at these massive paintings that are 18 foot tall and all around this incredible spot. I can't imagine what it's like being in here when everyone's in their penguin suits, right? Dickie bowed up, bow tied up and dressed up and ready to go and enjoying it. Red dress night was red. What is the one you guys didn't? Isn't there an event here?
If there is a local nonprofit with a major event, we've probably hosted it.
I think I saw one with a bunch of friends attended, and all their wives were in red dresses.
Oh yeah, sure.
Something like that. But anyway, my guest today is Seth Spillman, who is Chief Marketing Officer. Mate, thank you so much for welcoming me into this amazing ballroom.
Thanks for having me on.
So you obviously look the part, right? Dressed in double denim today.
Sure, that's right.
Rocking the mustache. I have a lot of mustache envy, because I have a decent mustache, but I just can't shave everything else around it because it just doesn't look
Well,
good.
see, I have beard envy because I can't do this.
You can't do the sides?
It does not grow.
Okay.
Does not grow at all. It's not like, oh, it's kind of patchy. It looks, no, it just isn't there.
It just isn't there.
So,
Well,
yeah, this was a pandemic mustache.
yeah, so
Because I had a mask on the whole time. So you skipped the like awkward teenage, that stage of mustache. Just went to full on mustache. So
that. Yeah, I have kind of, when I trimmed, I've like shaved the sides and I'm like,
yeah, you could totally do it.
It needs to be like, you aware of Movember, the charity?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to use that as an excuse.
Exactly.
And then we'll see it. Because my dad had one forever. And I remember the day actually that he shaved it off. And we went to pick up my mum from work. And she's walking towards the car and you can see that she's just like, hang on, like something's missing here. And she gets in the car and she's like, what have you done? He's just like...
It's funny because I forget that it's there. Obviously, I spent the majority of my life without any facial hair.
Right.
And so my wife likes it, so it's got to stick around.
There we go. As long as you get that approval, because sometimes, our significant others are like, shave it off.
Right, yeah. It wouldn't be happening otherwise. She's the one who actually has to look at this. So.
But when I did have it for a brief moment, you do get attached to it.
Yes.
Have you noticed that too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fully attached.
Yeah. And again, it takes a while, and I don't have knock on wood, a pandemic to mask it during the awkward phase, so it's sticking around.
All right, enough mustache talk. People listening are like, we're supposed to talk about cowboys and artwork and museums, and we've just rattled on for a few minutes about mustaches. People who are listening who have a mustache, who have grown one in the past or want to grow one, will understand. Ladies, you will not. I apologize. Thank you for listening to that. But Chief Marketing Officer, wear a lot of hats. We'll get to that story soon, but I want to hear more about you. Tell me your story. What's your Oklahoma story? You born and raised here?
Born and raised, roots in Oklahoma go back to the Cherokee Strip Run of 1893. My great-great-grandfather on my dad's side ran the run there, and so right outside Perry, Oklahoma. That land is still in the family. It was passed down to my father, and we'll see. Maybe it comes my way. So roots run deep here, and one of the stories that I have no idea if it's true or not, but family lore was that he actually chased a sooner off his claim there. So always enjoyed that as an Oklahoma State Cowboy. That was always fun too. So, but yeah, roots run deep. Born and raised here. My mother's side came because of the military. She was an Air Force brat, and so she grew up all over and was in, born in Kentucky, then England, Germany, Ohio, Missouri, and finally here in high school. So her and Dad met in high school there in Midwest City. And yeah, so that's how I got here. Spent my life here in Oklahoma. Have moved around, so did 4 years in Stillwater, and then immediately after that moved to Tulsa out of undergrad, and went to graduate at University of Tulsa, and got my MBA there, and started out in PR there in Tulsa at Schnocky Turnbow Frank Public Relations, and that was an amazing experience. Got to do things that someone at that stage in their career wouldn't normally have access to. Top PR firm in the city, one of the top in the state. And so got to be in a lot of rooms that I wouldn't have been in otherwise. And it was a bit of drinking through a fire hose, getting on my feet there. Had not taken any PR classes. Married a journalist, so that helped. But and anyway, so was with them for a while, and decided to join forces with a friend who had a company that was looking to start something different, and had a startup tech firm that didn't quite start up. Had a bit of success, but obviously it's not still there. Blue Frog Interactive, we did web development, software development, and then we were on the bleeding edge of mobile web development. Back when that was a thing in and of itself, before apps, before responsive design. Used to create websites specifically for the mobile web. But anyway, for various reasons that didn't quite work out, And my wife and I, Katie, had our first kiddo. We were there in Tulsa, and once you have a kiddo, it's like, nope, it's time to be home. And so we moved back to the Oklahoma City area and back to Midwest City, where both of us were born and raised, and went to work for the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, doing similar stuff, web development, website management on that end. That was kind of the foot in the door anyway. And then position became open at the Oklahoma City Convention and Visitors Bureau. And that started the longest spot in my career in tourism, selling Oklahoma City as a destination, which was a ton of fun. So it's fun selling your hometown. And was there for 8 years, I think, total. And Natalie Shirley, the previous president here at the Cowboy, was on the board there at the CVB, and found out that they were looking for a new chief marketing officer, and reached out, and here I am. So, yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been in this role then?
I've been here a little over 5 years now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Through... the good and the bad, I guess.
Yeah, so it was interesting. We've definitely gone through some transition here at the museum. At the time, there was a kind of restructuring going on, rebuilding. And so there wasn't a whole lot of institutional, historical knowledge on the marketing staff on 2019. And so, again, drinking through a fire hose and building things. So spent a lot of time and effort and extra hours putting in the work here. It's a fantastic institution, national institution here in our own backyard, and national institutions demand a lot. And so it was a fun challenge for me. Again, coming from the tourism side, I was very familiar with the museum, major tourism destination, but it's a lot different when you're promoting it as a tourism spot. It's one thing, you build the spots, you tell people about it, and whether they come or not is someone else's responsibility. When you're actually here and there's a front desk to gauge whether you were successful or not, there's a different level of accountability, let's put it that way. So yeah, 2019 was interesting. And then 2020 obviously was very interesting. Closed down for a few weeks, and actually the day that we were about to launch a new a significant installation outside, or new area outside Licha-Koshkomo. It was multi-year project, just a big undertaking for the museum, was the day that we closed. So, yeah. But then we had some social media success, so that helped too.
Yeah, I did see that. For your security guard, right?
Yes.
Famous security guard that went viral all over the country.
Yeah, that was interesting for sure. It's funny because everybody had their stories of the pandemic and time at home and making sourdough or whatever, and our experience was a little bit different here. So and a lot of that credit goes to someone who's no longer with us, unfortunately, Christopher Winfield, one of the most creative people I've ever worked with in my entire life. He was not from Oklahoma originally from California. Had spent some time in New York. He was actually the person behind the Bronx Zoo Cobra Twitter handle. I don't know if you remember that a couple years ago, many years ago now, but there was back when you could do fun things like this on Twitter,
right.
There was a snake that escaped from the Bronx Zoo, or escaped from its habitat or whatever, and he got the idea of jumping on Twitter and creating the handle Bronx Zoo Cobra, and tweeted as if it was a snake just exploring the city and just out on the town. And it helps that he was one of the funniest people ever. Wrote for Conan O'Brien for a while, and just an amazingly creative person. And anyways, that went viral. Right. And he had the experience of, he said he knew it was something when there was it NY1? Is that's the major station there, right? New York City, NY1. We'll say it is. He's watching that, and they're doing a story on the Bronx Zoo Cobra, and live on the air while they're talking, he gets on Twitter and tweets as if he's the Cobra, and it changes they see it, and it changes what they're talking about. And he says, I'm changing the news as it's happening. So that's a fun amount of power to have. So anyway, he came on board here just a month or two before that all went down. And we obviously saw that something like that might be happening. The pandemic was so interesting because the experience was so different all around the country, around the world. And so we saw the possibility, having seen some other areas where they were doing shutdowns and things. So we met as a marketing team and figured out, what would we do? How would we communicate? Because a museum, you collect all these things so that you can share them with the public. And so Christopher, we were sitting in that meeting and said, well, what if we had a security guard do a takeover of it? And it was one of those moments where it's like, oh, it's just delicious. Like, that would be so much fun. We started riffing on different things that we could do, and after hours, night of the museum kind of stuff. And so kudos to Natalie Shirley for giving us the green light on that. And then, yes, Tim, who is actually on security here, was willing to do it as well. And so it was, I always say that it was authentic in that Tim was involved. It was his voice. It was a lot of his input. But, Jimmy Fallon's a funny guy, but he's got a room full of writers. And so Tim had writers. Let's just put it that way. And anyway, we do that first tweet. It was just a couple years ago, just because it was March 17th was the first one. And so it just came on the anniversary 4 years ago, I guess. Oh, yeah. And anyway, and it almost immediately goes viral because it's picked up by people in the museum world. There's a Facebook group called Museum Social Media Managers, and they picked it up immediately and share it, and then Board Panda picks it up and does something, and it just goes crazy from there. And been involved with a couple of different things, but never anything like that. We're fielding calls from national media. They're wanting Tim on. We did a few. He was on Extra. We did CBS Sunday Morning. So filmed that in the galleries on my phone because no one was traveling at that time, which was just amazing. Someone who started his career in PR, and you're chasing those media hits, and then to have CBS Sunday Morning just Rita Braver right there on your phone. I mean, it was nuts. Ton of fun. So, but the really fun part about it was during a time that we were shut down and there was no other way to share the museum, to share what we do, we were connecting with a brand new audience all over the world. And still to this day, had somebody DM us on Facebook. This was just a couple weeks ago. They're in North Carolina. They're planning a trip here this summer because of what we did during the pandemic. And they've never been to Oklahoma. They've never been to the museum, obviously. And they just wanted to reach out and tell us that loved what you guys did. And we're so excited about finally being able to come. We have a famous, one of our most well-known paintings, Albert Bierstadt, Immigrants Crossing the Plains. She specifically mentioned that painting, even became a huge Bierstadt fan because we posted that painting. And things like that, when what you do for a living is trying to connect with people, showcase what you do here and get them interested in coming. It's rare that you get that direct feedback. Yeah. Like I mentioned at the CVB, it was even worse because you look at the hotel reports and you can see occupancy rates are up a certain amount, and you certainly hope that some of that is attributable to what you did, but you don't know. And there's so many different factors in those things. I mean, to an extent. It's different here when you have a front gate. So, but again, there's a lot that contributes to whether somebody actually makes a decision to come here or not. And so when you hear directly that what you did created this result, it never gets old.
No, because, I mean,
the only way you're going to find out is by, hey, can you fill in this form that says, where did you find us? And no one fills that in, right? And even if they do, they never fill it in truthfully.
Right.
Yeah, you're totally right. Those moments of those phone calls, those messages are extremely rare.
Yeah. And so again, and we heard that a ton, obviously, really in the heart of it. We were able to create some merchandise to go along with that that kept us on budget for sales at the store at a time when we were closed. And our website was nowhere near what it is now. I mean, it was a sad excuse for a website compared to what we have now. And so the fact that we were able to put together some mugs and some T-shirts and things that, it's a fun marketing win, but it also meant that you were meeting a store budget that, I mean, not to get too dramatic about it, but I don't know that anybody would have lost their jobs, but you certainly helped keep people's jobs, which is what we're trying to do here, keep the doors open. So at a time when doors were closed, that was a significant accomplishment. So yeah, ton of fun.
Yeah, and for someone like you said who grew up in the PR world, and I assume the way, like you said, you did your MBA in PR, and that was the plan. I guess your
well, PR wasn't the plan. So
what did you do?
So I did marketing for undergrad, and then just a general business. So basically, I had no idea what I was going to do when I went to Oklahoma State. Got the best scholarship there, so I went there, and business seemed like a safe bet, and so went into business. And then marketing was, you sit down as a I guess not pre-freshman, not freshman even, that summer before, and they go through, or they used to do it this way. I have no idea what they do now, but they sat down in a big room, and some representative of all the different areas within business came by and gave their pitch for this is accounting or this is whatever else. And I remember the marketing side, it was pitched as the creative side of business. Well, that sounds like fun. So it amazes me when people have a clear direction. Like when we talk to people now, especially on the museum side, it's amazing to me that people go to school to work in a museum. Like, as an 18-year-old and all the way through, and you follow it. That is just amazing to me. I was a pretty good kid, but I didn't have that kind of direction. Yeah. And so, no, I just thought business makes sense. I can get a job doing business things and business, and then marketing was creative, and graduated. Like I said, got married immediately. My wife went to OU. We were high school sweethearts, and she went to OU, I went to OSU. We did the long distance thing for 4 years and got married immediately after graduating. And she got a fantastic job in Tulsa at Tulsa People magazine as their managing editor. She was one of those people that knew exactly what she wanted to do. And so knew we were going to Tulsa, so started looking at different things, and had never really considered grad school, but applied. And I had worked in the athletics department at OSU in athletics marketing, and had no desire to go into great debt, and found out actually after coming back from our honeymoon, found out that I'd missed a call from the athletics department at TU, offering a graduate assistantship that paid for my time at TU, plus a very small stipend that covered our very small apartment's rent. So was able to at least not be a bigger burden on the family during that time. So, but it was just general business, MBA, and I ended up at Schnocky because, again, marrying a journalist, she had experience with them and said, these guys they know what they're doing. They're good. You might want to talk to them. And they were kind enough to offer me an internship in between years at TU, and then went to work for them full time afterwards.
Yeah. Let's see, athletics marketing at Oklahoma State was probably a lot different than what it is now.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
Talk about it being fun and creative. Now it's like insane.
Also one of those things, I guess I've got the gray hair to do it, but it's one of those back in my day stories. Right. I don't feel that old, but I guess I am to have back in my day stories. But back in my day, so Boone Pickens Stadium was brand new. Uh-huh. They didn't have the fancy smoke machines that they like, the big gate that they run through and all that stuff. It was literally me and one of my good friends, Nick Colburn. We'd go into Gallagher Iba and get a smoke machine out of the closet in there, and we'd walk it down to the tunnel, and one of us would hit the button on the smoke machine as the team ran out. And we did these videos of, and I don't even know where we planned to put these videos, because the internet was a thing, but not really. You didn't have social media. You didn't have any of that. But we had, I don't even remember the name of the cameras. It was Flip Cam. Was that a thing? Anyway, that was part of my job. Is we got action shots of the stuff going on during football games, and football and men's basketball were my two sports that I was lucky enough to be assigned to. And anyway, the shots were so shaky that they were useless. So I have no idea. It doesn't exist anymore, I promise. But yeah, I mean, the things are, you look at the videos that are coming out of that department now, and it's just like incredible. Of course, with an iPhone, you can do amazing things, and they're doing things beyond that. But yeah, we've come a long way in the last 20 years.
So is the athletic department as well.
Right.
Yeah. Not just the content that the teams have as well.
We're performing a little better nowadays too. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So yeah, so you mentioned kind of how you navigated your way here. And obviously working for the CVB for 8 years, like you kind of learn the ins and outs. But like you said, it's a lot different when, you know, your job is actively to get people in the building and you see it every day and blah, blah, blah. So interested to see kind of, you know, after Tim's viral moments go and things progress from there, do you then decide that like, hey, I need to double down on, we need to fix our website, social media is the thing, like, because a lot of people, I would assume this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people are out of state traveling through stopping rather than, you know, family of spring break, hey, let's go and see the...
Right.
So how do you do that? And social media is the best way, I assume, for that as well. But like, how do you navigate that over, you know, since, I guess, 2020, 2021 to now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. So it's about a 50-50 split, out of state versus, and that's including international travel. Being right here on Route 66, we see a significant amount of international travel as well. And
Centennial's coming up.
It sure is in 2026. So we're very excited about that. Have some plans to celebrate that. So, but yeah, that's been part of the challenge. You have this thing that draws attention to the museum, and that's great. But almost immediately, the conversation turned to, okay, but this isn't going to last forever. So then what? And obviously, Tim was, for those who are familiar with it, you can go back and look at it. If you're not, because again, it's funny, so it's worth going back to. Anyway, it was a specific voice, and it was done at a time when there weren't supposed to be any other employees here. Of course, security is always going to be in the building, always was. There was, and I actually said this to Mayor Holt recently. So we ran into him at an event, got to talking, and said, he mentioned Tim too, and that whole thing. And I said, I'm sorry, but I did not follow your mandate to stay home during that time, because I was here with Tim during that. Didn't quite abandon our posts, but somebody had to be the cameraman on some of these things. Right. But yeah, you're developing a specific voice of this everyman approach. And I think there were lessons learned from that still apply today. It worked well because it was different. I think, especially at that time, everything that was being done was the same. It was, you know, tinkling piano music and in these trying times, and we cut through that. It was the person who stayed at the post and was just sharing and I'd always say, I've talked about this whole thing a couple of times, different conferences and things, and I say, if you're from Oklahoma, you know a Tim. You're probably related to a Tim, and that's why it works so well. And I think for museums, that's one of the challenges too, is people assume certain things about a museum, and we can be guilty of feeding into that by being a little stuffy and you know, our things are better than your things about this, and And then for a museum like ours, which is specifically about Western culture, there can be that additional challenge of if you aren't involved in Western culture, you can assume it's not for you. And so I think what that whole experience taught us was just speaking plainly about it made the most sense, and looking for details that the average guest would be interested in. And we also broke the rules when it came to social media. We didn't use hashtags correctly. We didn't reply to things, all the things. And that's what drives me nuts about it now. Not to get off a rant or anything, but video obviously drives so much of it, and it's not just video, it's certain kinds of video. And things like trending audio just drive me nuts because it's all the same. It's all the same.
You haven't posted a reel with Beyonce's Texas
I
song
mean,
yet?
maybe I have personally, but guilty. Yeah. So the 56 Chevy truck has its own Instagram handle, and we did that, but not the museum. So, but yeah, I mean, it's it's supposed to be exposing what's unique about you to the rest of the world, but you have to be sure to do it in this very specific way and post at these specific times and showing these things. And that was one of the freeing things about that, was we decided, we don't have to do that. And especially because, oh my gosh, what else are you going to do? It's like most everybody else was just at home. And so it's like anything we do is going to be better than what we would have done otherwise, which was just, sharing pictures of what we had seen when we were there. And so anyways, that was some of the lessons learned that I think have carried over still, in trying to be a little bit more casual in our voice, and take those things that applied, because so we draw people from all over, but a lot of that is because if they're coming through Oklahoma, they'll stop here. It's that uniqueness of place. And so one of the challenges we can have, though, is a cowboy museum. If you're not comfortable in boots, if you've never worn a cowboy hat, if you don't consider yourself cowboy anything, then you can assume this place isn't for you. And our social media following up to that point was mainly regional and mainly lifestyle. So people who were comfortable with Western culture. And I think we saw an immediate change in that, getting followers from all over the world, and people whose pandemic experiences were different. And so there are just so many different things to navigate there and challenges. And so that was one of the things that also carried through with our latest marketing campaign, Find Your West. It helped us as we developed that and brought that back, because the point of that, Find Your West, is that the West is a big place, and the experiences there are much more diverse than people assume. And even Western art is a much broader category than people have a tendency to put it in. And so the idea is, wherever you're coming from, whatever perspective you're bringing, you're going to find something here. You're going to find yourself, hopefully, here. You're going to find your experience here. You're going to find something that speaks to you. And so I don't know if I answered your question well or not, but I think those were the lessons learned. And so that's how we've tried to evolve moving forward.
Yeah. The other thing that came to mind too, because I mean, there's a few things actually. The kind of explosion of Western culture, Western world, thanks to bull riding, thanks to Yellowstone, and a bunch of other things, right? Like there's those funny kind of memes on Instagram, whatever it is. It's like one day watching Yellowstone, and like
right,
2 days, 3 days, and you come back, But I know, I think, and I hope it's for the good, because just the Western values that people learn as well, like the cowboy way people talk about, especially at Oklahoma State, right? The cowboy way, cowboy code. essentially just be a good human being.
Right.
Like that's what it comes
Right.
down to. And I recently had JB Mooney on the podcast when he was announcing and Brandon announcing the Oklahoma Wildcatters team, which I know you guys have a bit of an involvement in.
That's right.
The museum, so I'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah.
But he's said the same thing. It's just do what you say you're going to do, right?
Right.
Just be a human being, be a good human being.
Right.
But yeah, talk a little bit about, I guess, maybe the Yellowstone influence, good and bad, and then we'll dive into the pro bull riding thing that's excitingly coming to Oklahoma City in July.
Yeah, we call that in the industry the Yellowstone halo, and so I think the Yellowstone not easy for me to say. The Yellowstone halo is real. There's certainly been an increased interest in Western culture. You've seen that. Previously, there was that spike in previous generations during Rhinestone Cowboy or Dallas or different cultural phenomenon that kind of shines a light back towards Western culture. And I think what's different now is our ability to access different aspects of Western culture are different now. We have the entirety of the world at our fingertips in ways that we've never had before. And the barriers to entry to Western culture are lower than they've ever been. So where previously it would have been a nice little spike and maybe would have bought some boots or whatever, and then it's just on to the next thing. Now for us, it's incredibly exciting because it's a new audience and it's a way for us to engage and bring along for that bigger story, because Yellowstone is a drama. It's not. There are aspects of it that showcase a real thriving culture that's continuing, but there's obviously a almost I'll be kind. It's a drama. And so there's obviously some things that go on there that, good grief, I hope don't happen on a daily basis in Montana or anywhere else in the West. And so I think even the creators of Yellowstone would agree with that. And we've honored the creators of Yellowstone here in this room. And we very much appreciate that. It's been fun to see the impact there, but then hopefully I think the best case scenario is you get to show that this is a big enough place for all of us to participate in it. And it gives us an opportunity to showcase different aspects of Western culture. It was funny, I was on the phone this morning with the Urban League of Portland, and they had reached out because they're doing a event in connection with the Pendleton Roundup in Oregon, one of the oldest rodeos in America. And they were talking about the same thing, that they had this experience of people being ignorant to the fact that Western sport is an incredibly diverse, from the very beginning, sport. And obviously in Oklahoma, we know a lot about that. Blessed with the Oklahoma Cowboys and lots of different black rodeos, Boley Rodeo, etc. And so there's different entry points. And rodeo, again, is just one aspect of it. And that's one area that we've been home to the National Rodeo Hall of Fame since its conception. And so we've told that story here. We've been home to most people grew up here in Oklahoma know us as the Cowboy Hall of Fame. That's fine. And people still call us that. I'm going to call you the Cowboy Hall of Fame. That's fine. I've got a t-shirt down in the gift shop that I can sell you with Cowboy Hall of Fame on it. So
the amount of people that confuse that with the Oklahoma Hall of Fame when I have
I'm sure.
I have him as a guest, and I tell you who did confuse it was Cord McCoy.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I got a call from him and his PR person. They're like, "Hey, we're outside." I'm like, "No, you're not." And Lena's like, "So where are you?" I'm like, "I'm in Mester Park, like close to downtown Oklahoma." She's like, "Yeah, we're not there."
No.
So
he's definitely familiar here, though.
He is familiar here for sure. Yeah.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, we've told the rodeo story, but we've also a Hall of Great Westerners, Hall of Great Western Performers. We've had a connection to the Hollywood version of the Cowboy since the beginning of this place too. So again, it's a big story, and we're happy to tell all aspects of it.
Talking of that and Hollywood and all that stuff and honoring people in this room. Like, that must give you spine-tingling excitement to have people from all over the country come to your home.
So the first year, I accepted the job in 2018, but I didn't start until January 2nd of 2019. Western Heritage Awards were in April that year, and speaking of Yellowstone, we were honoring Kevin Costner. He was being inducted into the Hall of Great Western Performers, and had the opportunity to interview him. He was in this room, and he was practicing his speech there on stage. So they had the room cordoned off. No one was allowed in, but I have a badge, so I came in and was able to grab him when he came off stage. And his acceptance speech for that is the best acceptance speech that I've heard for anything ever, anywhere. It's online. Google it if you haven't seen it. It's worth seeing. Told his story of his family's connection to Oklahoma, which I had no idea. His grandparents were here in Oklahoma. They left during the Dust Bowl. That's how he ended up in California, as so many people from Oklahoma I have family in California because of that. So just an amazing story, and you could have heard 1,200 people in this room, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was amazing, and then obviously getting to speak to him directly was pretty incredible. Kurt Russell was here, Robert Duvall. We'll be honoring Reba McEntire come this April, so Mo Brings Plenty as well. Speaking of Yellowstone, just an incredible guy, and getting to see him. So, yeah, I mean that's one of those aspects that I don't know because that we can only fit so many people in this room, and because it sells out so quickly and has an appeal from a national audience, that is an event that may not be as well known to an Oklahoma audience. And I think some might be, and shame on me for this being true, but some might be surprised to know that we bring that level of talent to Oklahoma every single spring, and have for many years. Actually, before this, it's in its 63rd year, I believe, this year. And so even before this building was open, we were bringing people here. John Wayne was involved with the museum from the very beginning. Famously rode a horse from downtown Oklahoma City up to Persimmon Hill here for the opening. His granddaughter is still on our board. And so, we've had Joel McRae's grandson is on our board. We have a connection to the Hollywood version of the West, and from the very beginning. And it's a significant thing. We tell people all the time, this is a national institution in our own backyard here in Oklahoma City. And we are the worst tourists in our own hometown. It's typical. And so I think that's part of the fun challenge for me. I spent a good chunk of my career trying to get people to come to Oklahoma City. And now a lot of that is trying to remind people here in Oklahoma City and elsewhere within Oklahoma, you have a national institution in your own backyard, and you have an opportunity to come experience that here. And it's just right down the road.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I was leading into my next question of, like, people don't realize how significant the things that you do here are. But also, even if they did, it's still cool. And you look back at the history of this entire country, go back 200 years, however many it is. There are serious ties to that here, right? When you were growing up, did you love history, or is this just something that is this just developed and you've just had, this awakening over the last 5 years, this trial by fire by working here?
I was always a history buff. My dad was a history major. He ended up as a stockbroker for his career, but he was a history major in college. And so I'm sure some of that rubbed off on me as well. And it's always had an appreciation for Oklahoma history because of my unique ties to it. Again, having family that participated in a land run was just always a fun. And when I was growing up, we reenacted the land runs in the third grade. Every third grader in Oklahoma did, and I understand the cultural sensitivities. And I'm not saying, again, we've evolved. I get it, and not necessarily disagreeing with that, but it is a part of my history specifically, and be that right or wrong, it's true, and so that is Western history. And I'm glad you put it the way that you did, because the story of America is the story of the West, the story of migration, both indigenous migration and immigrants coming from seeking a better life. And I think the stories of grit and perseverance and of diversity, of the biodiversity of the West. I mean, everything that you experience, the things that the world wants to know about America, the things that we our better selves are often represented here too. And you talked about those Western values. I think that's one of the unique things that we're kind of leaning into in a different way here at the museum, which is a little bit different than a typical museum approach. We're doing more to showcase those values that are so often associated with the West. We've got a new installation here in the hallway. You passed it on your way in here, called the Code of the West. It's an interactive that introduces that Code of the West, those 10 tenets, and gives guests the opportunity to scroll through those, choose one that they identify with most, and then choose the values that they would attach to that, and actually create an image that gets shared to the video wall there, but that also gets, if they choose, downloaded to their phone so that they can share that out as well. So the idea being that you hopefully are seeing those things as you explore the galleries, and then ask that question of, okay, so what does this mean to you? Because that's what museums traditionally do well, and should be doing, is asking those questions, just presenting facts, allowing people to come to their own conclusions. And so as a history museum, we tell the stories, good and bad, of history, and not taking any one side on that, but just kind of putting it plainly. Yeah. And so that's a different way, I think, in my most idealistic moments. I would hope that that's an opportunity for us to even impact the national conversation, because we all know how divided that is right now. And the beauty of these tenets, we were talking beforehand, of just a lot of it is just be a good human. And so I think that's there are values that are so often associated with the West, but a lot of it is just good life principles. And we could use more things like that we can all agree on, that aren't political, aren't any specific religion, it's just good life principles. And for whatever reason, they've been associated with the West, and it's because you saw so much of it bore out in the West, of people who had no other options but to treat people kindly, because it wouldn't go so well for them otherwise if they didn't. And again, not perfect in any way. Obviously, there's a lot of bad stories in the West too, of people not doing that. So it's not a whitewashing of history either. It's just saying it plainly.
Well, it's history, right? That's just the simple way to put it. Is, like you said, good or bad, it's history, and it's important, because you either learn from it or you don't. Most of the time we learn from it and look back and see, well, it's probably that wasn't the right thing to do back then. It was normal, but like you said, with doing the land run at third grade, like every kid in Oklahoma did that, right? So yeah, I agree with you totally on all of that stuff. I'm not a huge history buff, but I have a huge appreciation for history, especially coming from the UK, when we, like I used to walk through a castle to go to school, and that castle.
I did not.
And it's funny, it's not like a fairy tale castle; it's in ruins. But there was a plaque that said this is 1,000 years old. I'm like, it's kind of cool, right? Right. When you think of like who else has walked through this, and how many arrowheads are under the grass right now, like if I go digging, right? But no, it's and obviously Western history covers so much, right? That your archive in the basement is just filled with a bunch of things, but also your curators have like the biggest puzzle piece to put together, right? And then you tie with marketing. You're like, how do we curate all this stuff and make it enticing and people to come here?
It's again, Western is a broad description, and I think the marketing speak that I use is we tell the story of the West and all the ways in which it's been told over the years, and so that's through fine art. We have a significant fine art collection, and that's one again where even if some people hear Western art and they have a very definite picture in their mind of what Western art is, and dusty old cowboys and just kind of the 1970s version of Western art, and the art that we have here could hang in any national gallery. It just happens to be here, and it happens to be focused on one specific topic, which is Western. But again, that is a very broad term, and so I think talking about that challenge that we have in telling those stories, it's almost how do you pick a lane? And so some of it is being able to speak to what we can speak to, what our collection gives us the opportunity to speak to, and then what can we bring in from other exhibitions that allows us to tell deeper stories. We had an exhibition on Black Cowboys here just a couple of months ago that rounded out the end of the year last year. We were able to add some material to that. It was an exhibition that was brought to us. It was done by the Whitty Museum in Texas, but we actually had some items in our collection that we were able to add to that. We don't have enough items in our collection to do an entire exhibition on that. It is a significant exhibition because it is significantly difficult to pull something like that together, and so that gave us an opportunity to tell a deeper story, one that we can tell and that we're doing a better job of telling. Just recently worked with Prairie Surf Media on a short documentary on the origins of the cowboy. It's set to be installed in the galleries here in the next week or two. And that's telling that cowboy origin story, which is one that has been not fully told, not always told well. It is a much more diverse story. It actually starts in West Africa, with herdsmen in West Africa being the first to use ropes and to herd animals from horseback. Makes its way to America from Spain, through New Spain and up into the southwest of America. Cowboys started out, they were not typically carrying guns. That's a myth that was added later. It sold books and made for good, exciting movies, and so it was one of those that was added later. And so again, people have a picture of what a cowboy is. Cowboys 1 and 4 were cowboys of color, and so it was much more diverse. And so yeah, it's a fun opportunity for us because we tell that Hollywood version, and that's its own thing. But we have the opportunity to tell the true story of what the cowboy is and of Western culture. Period. Our collection and Native American culture is significant as well. And again, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, people may not realize that we have such a significant collection, but you'll see that in our Native American gallery. You'll see that in an exhibition that's up right now called Nations at War that pulls from our collection. But it's so it's a broad story for sure.
There's so much to share, right? So much to show. How do you go about collecting? And you actively is the museum actively buying artifacts like every year? I mean, how does that look?
So it's an interesting story. We started with no collection. The museum was open in 1965 without a collection, and the way that we got to the collection is very interesting. There's a book that is in Persimmon Hill, our gift store, if people are really interested in a deep dive. But we have a collections plan now that helps guide that, and is really focused on, again, the stories that we want to tell and what do we need to be able to tell those stories. And so there is an emphasis on some areas of deficit in our collection. art from women artists is one area that was identified by our curators, and more artists of color. And so that's been a intentional effort of the museum over the years, over the last few years of putting that down and making that a part of our collection process. Some of it comes to us. We're contacted by people saying, hey, I've got this thing. Walter Brennan's family, famous actor, came to us just recently and said that they had a belt buckle and a brand that they wanted to gift to the museum. And so we were extremely pleased to host. It was one of his daughters, I believe, that reached out to us originally, and so that was who we had been talking to. And then it came day of when she came to bring it, and it was like a family reunion. They had people from all over the country. I think there was about 15 or 20 members of his family that came and just wanted to be here for that. And we have two of his Oscars in our collection on exhibit in our Western Performers Gallery. Previously, when we inducted people into our Hall of Great Western Performers, they would commission a portrait of that person. I am assuming that became cost prohibitive, so they stopped doing that. But funny enough, the portrait of Walter Brennan was done by Norman Rockwell. So our one Norman Rockwell in our collection was of Walter Brennan. So that was one that came to us. It was a belt buckle from his time on a specific movie, John Wayne film, where he did a belt buckle for everybody on the cast. And so famous Red River, Double D, I believe. Yeah. Gosh, I should know more as a marketing person. We just got that. Good grief. Anyway,
you have a lot of things. A lot of hats.
You talked about that history buff thing. So that's the challenge in marketing is that I am not a curator, but I'm the one that gets to speak to people about the things that the curator does, or curators do. And so you have to speak of them as if you are a curator, as if you are the one who went to 8 years of college to study these things, or whatever, however long they go to college. So anyways, it's funny because when I was at the CVB, that was always one of the fun things, doing that deep dive on different entities. There would be different museums or restaurants that I may have eaten at once, museums I may have gone to once or twice, but I had to speak about them as if I helped found them. And so that's part of the challenge here, but that's marketing, right? And you talked about the history thing. I think it's curiosity. I think if you're good at your job, then in communications, then you have an innate curiosity. You want to know the behind the scenes. You want to know the deeper stories, and then you get anxious to share those deeper stories with people. And so if you're doing it right, that's hopefully how it works.
Yeah, the storytelling side is fun, right? Yeah. It's so much fun. It's just crafting the story in a way that whoever is listening they don't get clouded, I guess, by you just nerding out with the history or nerding out about something, or whatever it is. That's the hard bit too. It's how do you create something that's for the general public, right? For the double history major who knows absolutely everything and probably knows more than the person giving the talk or creating it.
We are fortunate to have curators here on staff that are it's incredible to work with people who have focused their entire lives on a subject. And so it is a ton of fun to be in the same building as people that do that and to get to speak to them about different things and learn more. But obviously, where I was going with that was they have such an incredible ability to also translate that and speak to an everyday audience. Do they always do it? No. And so some of that is kind of translating curator speak. But really, we are incredibly fortunate here to have curators who do that so well. The challenge is that nerding out thing. They can deep dive on some things that maybe it's okay, hit the highlights, and that's all we're going to have time for, sort of thing. But yeah, that part of it is a ton of fun. Well, lots of fun. Lots of parts of it are fun, but that part of it in particular, just being enough of a history nerd to care about it, but then working with people who are walking encyclopedias on the subjects.
Yeah. Moving in a different direction, you guys are under construction right now.
We are.
Are you allowed to talk about what so exciting
You bet I am.
stuff you're dealing with right now?
No, when you talk about storytelling, that's a perfect segue, because that's what we're doing here. We're adding to our abilities to tell stories. And so the most visible construction for those driving by on 63rd is our parking lot. The least exciting part of it is our parking lot. So that's undergoing a major renovation, adding an entrance on Grand Boulevard as well. So if anybody's come for our events and things, that's going to help a lot. But that's the have to do it, pull the Band-Aid sort of thing. The fun parts are our west hallway is currently under construction. I mentioned Code of the West, which is the interactive installation here in our east hallway. That's one that was the first start of this. It's all part of our $40 million capital campaign that we're in right now called Live the Code. And again, going back to the Code of the West, how are we living the code? And so that $40 million is going to help fund our parking lot, funded Code of the West, our west hallway, which is going to become a introductory immersive experience. And for those here in Oklahoma who saw the Van Gogh immersive that made its way to both Oklahoma City and Tulsa, we are working with the same group that did that. They're a company called Lighthouse Immersive out of Canada. And they work with the best of the best from around the world. And so we are the first museum that they are working with on an immersive experience. And that hallway between, if you've been to the museum, you've looked right as you're standing there in front of End of the Trail. Typically, you would have seen Canyon Princess, which was our giant sculpture there at the end of the hallway. You are no longer going to see that when you turn right now. You're going to see a wall there that is going to block off that whole hallway going in there. And that's going to be, we call it an introductory immersive experience because that's our main way to get to the galleries. And so the idea is to introduce people to what they should experience here in the museum. It'll have 4 different vignettes. There'll be a teepee, a Conestoga wagon, some barn doors, and a rodeo chute, a bucking chute. So there'll be physical objects there, installations, but a lot of it will be that traditional immersive experience, projections on the walls and some on the ceilings, and projections on the items themselves. And those items were chosen specifically because of the stories, the content pillars, if you will, for marketing speak, that we can speak to best, which is Native American culture, cowboys, ranching, and rodeo. And also in that story, obviously, is pioneers and immigration movement west. And so we chose a teepee specifically because that's also part of that education. So many times the worst of the rewriting of history was that, well, all indigenous people lived in teepees, right? And in this part of the country, a lot of them did, but throughout the West, they did not. And so it was intentional to use something that is familiar to people, but then also we'll talk about other indigenous dwellings, and we'll ask that question of who were the first people in the West. And throughout that experience, there'll be these questions projected on the wall. So some fun facts and some questions about what is a cowboy? Why did people move west? What is rodeo, and why is it popular today? Where did it start? The idea is to load people with those questions as they go into the galleries, and then that's also the main way out of the galleries. So you'll also walk back through that experience, you'll see those questions again, and then hopefully you'll ask them anew, or be able to answer them anew, I guess I should say. So also part of that $40 million capital campaign is a expansion of our vault. There's some renovations that need to happen there that will be underway soon, but we'll also be about doubling the size of our vault, and that's so that we're stewards of these things. We're preserving them so that we can use them to be able to tell those stories. And so there's some new technologies that need to be added there, some things that need to be done so that we can be sure that we're the best stewards possible of that story. And then a new immersive experience, true immersive experience, our Kerr Gallery, which is our temporary exhibition gallery. For those who have been to the museum before, you're standing at Kenya Princess, the gallery to your right, it will become a what is more akin to what you experienced with immersive Van Gogh or immersive Disney or some of those things, where we'll be able to tell stories in a way that's different. And again, at the core of what we do is storytelling, and it's finding ways to make those stories engaging for new audiences. So often as we just say for younger audiences, and yes, that's true. You have to find some way to hook the kids, but that's true of all of us, right? Because again, I'm not particularly young, but when you have the same story done in a more exciting way, it sticks better, and so that's part of what we're doing here. And I think for those who grew up calling us the Cowboy Hall of Fame, for those who came during their 6th grade field trip but haven't been before, for those who are part of the I came and turned left, not right crowd, so you came to an event in this beautiful space but never made your way down to the galleries, this is going to be some updates to this museum that are exciting, that are going to be an opportunity for a new visit, a chance to come again.
Yeah, it's. I hadn't ever turned left. I'd only gone right, and I'd gone to that amazing street that you guys have.
Prosperity Junction.
It's just. I walked in the door and I'm like, no way. There's no way, right? And you're like, how did I not know about this?
Yeah.
And it is incredible, and I would love to one day host a giant British Bake Off style dinner down the entire street one day.
Done. Let's do it.
We need to figure that out.
Let's do it.
Tickets coming soon.
Absolutely.
We'll find out the chefs to cook for you, because I'm not going to cook for you because I'm terrible at it. But yeah, like it. That's obviously a smaller event space that you guys have. Yeah,
and that was done in the 1990s, and that was an immersive experience in the 1990s, because it's as if you're walking down Main Street in a turn of the previous century cattle town, surrounded by these different shop windows and different things like that. It appears as if you're under a night sky. That was immersive at that time with that technology, and so that technology will be updated, and we'll be doing more new and exciting things.
Yeah. Finishing up, two questions. What is your favorite thing to look at in this building? And the second question is, where is your favorite place in this building? Currently, because that's going to change.
Yeah. So, favorite place is easy. It's this room right here. So 21 years ago, my wife and I had our wedding reception in this room. It was not a particularly big wedding, and so it was not, I guess it wasn't small, but, you look at the size of this room, 1,200 seated for dinner, you think, oh, wow, geez.
You could play ice hockey in this room.
Easily. I think regulation, you could do
regulation
that.
Size.
Yeah, and so that would be fun, too. But, yeah, that's fun for me. I lost my mother when I was 26, and thankfully got married young, and so lost my mother in 2007, and so I remember, and I have a picture of her and I dancing in this room at about this spot right here. And so a lot of fun memories in this room. A lot of fun memories tied to working in this museum, in this room, again, getting to meet people like Kevin Costner and all the different fabulous events that we have here, and then being surrounded by this art. This room here went through a very significant renovation, floor to ceiling, all but the art was redone, and so it is, as far as event space goes, one of the more unique in the region, and because you can hold your event in a big room just about anywhere. Again, being on that side of the business previously, got to travel some in previous job, and you'd go into a convention center, and a lot of it is you're just trying to reach that table stakes of, we have so much square footage or in this kind of technology and whatever. And so been guilty of, you go into a ballroom like this in Austin or somewhere else, and it's like, yeah, the carpet's wild and the walls are gray and beautiful technology, but you could you could put somebody in that room, blindfold them on their way there, and they'd have no idea what city they're in. There's only one room where you're surrounded by 5 triptychs painted specifically for that space by Wilson Hurley. And so, yeah, this room, that's an easy one. Favorite piece of art, these paintings are certainly part of it. I'm a sucker for a night painting. There's a number of those in our galleries, Remington's, so that's good. But there is one particular in our Prix de West gallery. So I didn't really talk about Prix de West. That's another major event that we get to bring to Oklahoma every year, and that is the most significant event in Western art in the world. So the top creators of Western art are brought to our museum every year, and that is also the largest fundraiser for the museum. Around millions of dollars in Western art are sold every year. But one piece is purchased every year, and it's by Jeremy Lipking. It's called Silence and Sagebrush, and it is a woman wrapped in a blanket, sunset, and he's just one of my favorite artists, period. But it's also a piece that is directly across from the door leaving the administrative offices, which are you access through that gallery. And so I am able to open that door, walk out, and look at just an incredible piece of art every single day that I'm here. And so there are certainly worse work environments.
Definitely. Seth, has been a blast. I'm going to have to come back more often and just check
please
it out.
do. Say when.
And really dive in and, really enjoy this space. And my goal is to bring people with me, because they get to do it too, which will probably be my family, but locals more often because my parent family don't come out all the time. What's the best place for people to find information about it? Website, I assume? Website
would be the best. It's nationalcowboymuseum.org.
Awesome. And then I'll put your Instagram down below as well, because you guys had a nice little bump thanks to Tim and the creative team, and thanks to Christopher Winfield, who did all the writing and some of the writing, I guess, behind all that. For people listening, come on by, come down to the National Cowboy and Heritage Museum. Even if you remember it as the Cowboy Hall of Fame, it's still the same. Come on by, come check it out, and tell them that you heard it on the podcast. That'll make me feel good. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by Citizens Bank of Edmond. Citizens Bank of Edmond has been serving Edmond since 1901. They pride themselves on investing in the community and are here for all your personal and business banking needs. For more information, go to mycitizens.bank and follow them on Instagram at citizensedmond, as well as go bank there, because I bank there too. It's been a fantastic personal experience for me. I've had my podcast account there now, my podcast business account there now for 4 years now, I think, and it's been fantastic. So definitely worth your time. They're a great group of people, and they're always there to answer the phone when I forget my password, because I seem to forget it daily. Go to Citizens Edmond and check them out. It's been awesome. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.